We are talking about email aliases, and one of the first things that I want to cover here is the 5 types of email aliases. There might be more, but these are the 5 that I think really boil down to the ones that are the most used. And I think there are some that are better than others, but generally speaking, these are the 5 that I've seen most. So separate email accounts. We'll explain exactly what these are later. Burner email addresses. These are temporary. You've got subaddressing, which if you've never heard that plus method, I'll explain that in a minute. You've got custom email URL, and then we have alias forwarding service. All of these, we're going to walk through each of them individually, and then I'm going to give you the pros and cons of each so you can kind of understand better which ones you could use for different circumstances. So for example, what about setting up multiple Gmail accounts or multiple Microsoft accounts? And that is entirely possible. I looked it up. I do not believe, as far as best my knowledge, it is not against Google's terms of service to have multiple email accounts. I have multiple inboxes for them as long as you're following their terms of service for each one of those. So you could set up this Gmail account with a different login and password and another Gmail account with another login and password. And the pros of that are that you have a lot of control, right? You can do anything and everything with that one particular email account and then do something completely separate. You can set up different profile pictures. You can set up obviously different passwords. I hope you would, all of that stuff. And it's free, especially if you're using something like Gmail. But the cons of that are that it's time consuming, at least to set up. It is difficult to manage. I've noticed that myself with multiple email accounts. So we'll just call them accounts right now, where logging in separately. There is something I believe called Go Login, which allows you to kind of see merge all of your accounts into one and keep like a single dashboard. But that's a paid thing. And so and honestly, I've never tested it, so I can't tell you how good that works. But it is a way to manage multiple accounts. Outside of that, it's difficult to manage. And then you've got limited aliases. If you're using Gmail, then unless we start using subaddressing, which I'll get to in a moment, then you're limited to the email address for that free Gmail account. You can't create additional ones. The only exception to that would be if you have a business account, right? So if you're using Gmail as a means of for your business. So like for me, allthingssecure.com, I can create, as long as I have that custom URL, custom email, and we'll get to that in a second as well, you can create a lot of different aliases through that. Okay, so that's multiple accounts. The second one is the temporary account. There's a lot of people that don't even know this exists. So you may not be able to see this here, but you've got you can create a temporary email address, and like it lasts for like a minute. So if you needed to go in and this is temp, I'll give you the URL in just a second, don't worry. But you can, if you want to sign up for something or get a coupon or something like that, you can use this email and then it will show up. You can get whatever you needed, that coupon code or whatnot. And then that URL, that email address is temporary. It goes away. You can't use it anymore. All right. And so, I mean, that's the benefit and the con here, right? The example that I just gave is temp-mail.org. I'm not necessarily, there's a bunch of different ones. This is just the one that I've seen and I'll use. I don't use these burner emails, honestly, very much. It is very simple to use and it's disposable. These are all the pros. However, you cannot send and reply back to these emails. So there may be, like, if you pay for that account, I don't know. I think I've seen that StartMail and other these have paid versions and maybe you can respond there. But generally speaking, especially for the free version, you cannot reply to these emails. So it's not like you could give that temp email to somebody that you want to email you so that you could email back. That's just not going to work. Also, it's temporary, which means that not only will you not be able to access this email, but there's the potential that they're going to recycle and reuse that email address again. So you definitely don't want to use a temp email for anything of a sensitive nature or any type of account that you would want to be able to access again. And the service receives your email. Okay, so not all of these will actually receive your email. Obviously, Gmail receives your email, but when you're using something like StartMail, they will actually receive your mail. It's not a forwarding service. It is them receiving your mail. And again, that can present its own security risks. Okay, we've got subaddressing. This is the third type of email alias. And if you're just joining us, I'm walking through the 5 types of email alias before I jump into my strategy for using them, because I want to make sure we've got context here. So subaddressing is what you've probably seen before. It was made popular by Gmail, where instead of my name at gmail.com, you've got my name plus newsletter at gmail.com. And you could sign up for a newsletter that way. I've seen a lot of people do this where they go in and when they're signing up for something on All Things Secured, if you want to get that checklist that I have, then they do my name plus ATS at gmail.com. And that way, that email address, you can take and create a filter in your email client, whether that's Gmail or Thunderbird or any other email client. You can create a filter for that specific email address and then have it avoid your inbox and go straight to a specific folder. And I'll show you how to do that in a second. But I want to let you know that the pros and cons of doing this. First, it can be used with most email clients. So you can use this with Gmail. I'm pretty sure you can use this with Yahoo and Microsoft. Just adding this plus sign and anything else will create its own email address, but all of those emails will funnel directly back into your primary inbox. Okay, just make sure you understand that. And it's easy and simple to create. So you can create these on the fly. You don't have to go into your account and create them and then you can use it. No, you just go in, and the moment that you're typing in your email address, you can create a subaddress. A problem, again, it's easy to decode, right? So if I'm going into my email CMS, customer management system, seeing the people that have given me their email address, perhaps you're one of them. If you've given me this, your name plus something at gmail.com, I know what your email address is. All I have to do, and I could even write a script for it to remove anything between the plus sign and the @ sign, right? And now I've got your email address. Some services won't accept a plus sign when you're signing up for something. I think this is a little ridiculous, but it's true. And then finally, you cannot reply from this address. So again, if you wanted to be able to send an email from my name plus newsletter, my name plus ATS, if you wanted to reply to me, the moment you reply, I will know your true email address, because the reply won't come from the sub address. It will come from your primary main email address. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, next yes, I wanted to make sure that I gave you a quick explanation of how to handle sub addresses. So if you are managing multiple sub addresses, what I would do, and this is not a bad way to do aliases, by the way, especially if you need something quick and you don't have anything else ready and available, is going in and creating that sub address. You don't have to go in, sorry. Let's say you're on a landing page and they're asking for your email address and email address to send you something. You can create that sub address, your name plus, and then I would generally put the name of the brand. Let's say you're signing up for something on All Things Secured. Go ATS at gmail.com or whatever your email is. Then you go into Gmail and you create a filter. That's going to be up at the top. You're going to create a filter, or in the settings you can create a filter as well for any email sent from that address. So it's going to say sent. It's the to, right? So it would actually be the to address. I'm confusing myself here. So if I was, and trust me, I was trying as I was preparing this presentation to think about how I could go in and show you live my email addresses and my inboxes. But the problem is there's just such a privacy and security risk that I couldn't figure out how to do it. I almost went and created a bunch of new accounts just to be able to show you. But that's just really hard. So I've got some notes here saying, GitHub won't accept email aliases. Yep. And that's very true. There's a lot of these for the subaddressing that won't accept it. But for those that do, you can create the filter for any email sent to that address in your inbox. And then you want to select, at least this is my preference, skip the inbox and apply a label. And then you would create a new label for that. And so now every time an email comes in, it's going to come into that label. And the problem is you need to now make sure that you check those labels if you need to access any of those emails, but they will be there. It just won't be in your inbox, and it will be put directly in that folder. And then you can create a unique label for each of those sub addresses. So that's how I would use sub addressing when dealing with email aliases. And this is pretty well known, so I don't suspect that this is, any rocket science for a lot of you or anything terribly new, but hopefully this is understandable. All right, let's move into the custom email URL. A custom email URL is basically when you purchase your own URL, right? So I've purchased allthingssecured.com. I did that many years ago. And now I set up the MX records in my DNS, right? So whether that's GoDaddy or Cloudflare or however I've set up all of my DNS records, you set that up to be able to accept email from that URL. And so now that I own that URL, I can create pretty much unlimited aliases. I think most of it depends on what email service you're using, but generally speaking, you can create a ton of aliases because you own that URL, right? So the pros here are, here, I'll give you an example. So instead of my name at gmail.com, we're doing Josh at customurl.com, or something like, I can create a new one, newsletter at customurl.com. And that custom URL, again, just replace this with whatever you end up purchasing. And you can purchase domains from Namecheap, GoDaddy, all that stuff. That usually you'll purchase them, first time for somewhere around $9.99. That price may have gone up since the last time I've purchased. And then renewal, you have to renew that every year. So keep in mind, and all this, you'll see this in the pros and cons, that there are costs involved to maintaining your own URL and a little bit of time to set up. So another one, banking at customurl.com if you wanted to. Like I said, the pros here, and this is a pretty big pro, so listen carefully. You are not locked into any particular service. This is a problem when you're dealing with email in most cases, whether you use Proton Mail, Simplelogin, Anon, or was it Addy.io, like a lot of these services, is that when you're using their email aliases, you're somewhat locked into their service. It would be you can export your aliases in some cases, but you wouldn't necessarily be able to control them. But let's say that I'm using Gmail to host my allthingssecured.com email. I can very easily migrate all of that over to Proton and then start using Proton for All Things Secured because I own allthingssecured.com. And so that ownership of the URL gives me a little more flexibility, and I'm not stuck in one particular service. Now, I haven't honestly heard of too many stories of people being stranded or like there being a terrible consequence to being stuck in a particular service, especially when it comes to email aliases. But as a channel that talks a lot about security and privacy and owning your security and privacy, and particularly owning a lot of the things that we once got for free, right? Gmail versus something like Proton Mail or Tutanota. Those, again, I just want to make sure that I'm clear about that, is that having a custom URL allows you to own your own email. You can create as many email aliases as you want. And then you can also create something like a catch-all. And this is, you can create an email address where basically anybody who misspells your name or just types in pretty much anything in front of the @ sign for your custom URL, it will land in a catch-all email address, which you could then filter out into a folder if you wanted to. But that's just, that's kind of a way to make sure that you could give anybody any email address. So you could, let's say I meet Joe Bob on the street and I could say, hey, he says, what's your email address? Oh, my email address is joebob@allthingssecured.com. So then if he emailed that, it would enter my inbox. And then if I didn't want to receive that anymore, I could actually filter out and block that particular email address if I wanted to. So I'm not actually creating an alias. I'm just using this catch-all and then blocking anything that I don't want. I hope that makes sense. It's not the most efficient way to do email aliases, but it is one way to do it. The cons of doing this is that you're not as private as you think you are when you're using these emails, because everything that uses your custom URL is now tied back to your identity. Even if you use a random or an anonymized first part of that email address, because everything is tied to your custom URL on the back end, that presents a little bit of a privacy risk. Not huge, but enough that it's not my like primary way of creating email aliases. And you could have multiple URLs if you wanted to, but now we're getting into the whole having multiple email inboxes, and that can just get a little bit messy. I do know that with something like Proton, you can create, I've got a paid account with Proton, and I can create up to 100 email accounts. And some of them, I can even change the back end of the URL to like pm.me or protonmail.org, or I don't remember what it is. But you can create multiple email aliases that way. And I know that Tutanota has the same thing. A lot of these privacy related email services allow you to create custom aliases with your custom URL. Just keep in mind the cons to doing that. Okay. And then finally, I wanted to just point out that this, in addition to requiring you to purchase a URL, which isn't that bad, it's not that hard. Hopefully you've done this before. If not, it's actually quite fun to own your own URL. You will also, you don't have to, but I would recommend also setting up DMARC, which is what helps make sure that nobody can send email as you and impersonate you. And for some services, this can be done automatically. And then in a lot of cases, you have to set that up for yourself. I've had to set that up for myself on All Things Secured to make sure that nobody could email my audience, you guys, using the All Things Secured email. And DMARC is what kind of protects that. It's that the bouncer at the front door of the email inbox to make sure that you are who you say you are, and that this email actually comes from Josh. So setting that up, I've got emails on this channel that explain all of that, but that's not the most intuitive thing to do. So that would be one con of using a custom URL. Okay, let's see here, and I will just answer real quick. It's hard to obfuscate from the service. That's what Josh says, and I agree. And he also asked from a visionary subscriber. I think so. It was one of the top ones for Proton Mail. All right. The aliasing forwarding service. There's actually a lot of these that you can choose from. There's addy.io, which I believe is what used to be a non-addy. There is Hide My Email, which is kind of the service you get from Apple when you're signed into iCloud. So they can actually hide your email and forward it onto whatever email address you want. There's something like Cloaked. There's also, oh gosh, there's another one. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I can't remember it. And then Simplelogin is the one that I've used a lot because it's just fantastic. And Simplelogin was purchased by Proton a few years ago, and now they're integrating it into not just Proton Mail, but also integrating it into Proton Pass, which is their password manager. So this is kind of one of the backbone of most people that I know that use email aliases, use an email alias forwarding service of some kind. And there's a couple reasons for that. First is, and this might be hard to see, but I just want to explain, like when you have your inbox and Simplelogin, and then any of the services that you sign up for, you create the email alias. And what happens is Simplelogin, or any of these, most of these, Addy as well, the ones that I cloaked, what happens is they create two aliases, one that goes between you or the service and Simplelogin, and a second that goes between Simplelogin and you. And what this allows for is this allows for you to reply to that email and have it come from the alias. So if you create an alias, Groupon@alias.com, and that Groupon sends an email to Simplelogin, which then comes to you, it actually doesn't come from Groupon@alias.com. They create a different alias. And then that, when you reply to that, Simplelogin decodes that and makes sure that it gets sent back to Groupon using the Groupon@alias. So it allows for a seamless kind of back and forth where you can communicate with somebody using that alias without having to have a separate inbox or have like set up multiple aliases. You just click reply and then it sends it out there. Another quick note that I think is important is that most of these services, and I know Cloak, Simplelogin, all these do not actually host your email. So they don't store your email on your servers. They just pass through and forward that. So that's another privacy aspect of using a forwarding service, is that they're not storing your email, and therefore there's hopefully not a huge privacy risk. Now, honestly, I'm not going to be using these for banking, but or anything super sensitive, but it's worth knowing that they don't store your emails. So the pros of doing something like this is, again, you can send and receive from these email addresses. You could create as many of these aliases as you want. And it's really simple to go in and create these, right? I have a custom, within Simplelogin, I have a custom backend URL that I created. And what this means is that on the fly, I can just create, I can, if I'm out and about again, and I'm surfing the internet and someone wants my email address, I can just come up with whatever I want on the front end before that and then I know the back end is the one URL that Simplelogin gave me. And the moment that someone sends an email to that alias, it gets created and it's attached specifically to that sender or that particular URL. I'm hoping that I made that clear. That even as I'm saying that, it sounds kind of muddy, but all that means is it's really simple to create an alias. I don't have to log into Simplelogin, or I don't have to log into ProtonMail to create a new alias. As long as I know my custom URL for the alias in the backend that I've set up with Simplelogin or ProtonMail, they will create that alias for me. I don't know if Addy or Cloaked, I don't think Cloaked does that. You can, but it's very simple. Cloaked has its own app where I can create aliases very easily. Okay. The cons of doing something like this are that it's not always free. And I say not always just because I think there are free tiers to some of these services. But if you really want to take advantage of a lot of the power of them, you're going to want to, especially having unlimited aliases, you're going to want to pay a little bit. So most of these services have something. Let's see here. We've got, yeah. All right. Yeah, I've got emails on this channel. So I appreciate you guys. This is live. This isn't scripted, and I do say the wrong things. I said I have emails on this channel that explain this. I have videos on this All Things Secure channel that explain this. Obviously, I'm pretty sure you knew exactly what I meant. Thanks for pointing that out, though, Josh. So alias forwarding service. We have these 5 email alias solutions: separate email accounts, burner email addresses, subaddressing, custom email URL, and alias forwarding service. Okay. Now, before I dive into my strategy, which I'll explain in just a moment, I want to stop for a moment just because I am grateful. The way that I can do these type of live streams and make it worthwhile for me and for you is because of sponsors. And I only accept sponsorships from the companies that I believe in. And hopefully, if you've seen over the past few years, it's not like I jump around and take sponsorships from any and everybody, right? I am very particular about that. And Yubico is something that I use personally. It's something that I've set up for my wife and for my parents because I believe in it so much. These little keys are a critical part of my online security. And I set up a primary and a backup for myself and my wife. We share a backup that is put in, it's not kept with us. So we're about to travel here in a little bit, going for a wedding. And I'm going to have one key with me and I'm going to keep one key behind. And the reason for that is that I do lose this one key. I don't want to lose access to my accounts. So when it comes to email, we're talking about owning your email, owning your security. The way you do that is the key like this. And whether you use Gmail or Proton or Tutanota or any of these email services, locking your email with a YubiKey, it's a no-brainer for me. Anybody that you follow in this online security and privacy space, whether that's Naomi, whether that's, I'm trying to think, you could probably name a bunch more than I can. I can't think of any off the top of my head. Liron, a friend of mine, they're all going to talk about using these security keys as one of the easiest ways for the average person to secure their online account. So if you're not using one, I would suggest you go to allthingsecure.com/YubiKey5off, and you can get $5 off. If you want to purchase 2, you can get $10 off a key that you want. You can do the 5 series, which I think is, $50 and up per key. I know that might be a lot for some people. So there's also the security key series, which I believe is $25 a key. And with $5 off, that's only $20. And getting 2 of those is really not that bad. And both, like the security key has, I think, everything that you need. It has NFC so that you can just tap it on your phone, use it on your, your mobile device. And then it The only thing it doesn't have is the ability to have like an authenticator app on, like authenticator codes on the key itself. Whereas with my 5 series, I can have authenticator codes on the key, which is another secure way to do that. So these are fantastic. You can lock these keys with a PIN code. As a matter of fact, as you're using passkeys, you have to lock it with a PIN code, which makes it makes it multi-factor authentication. Because in order for me to get into my accounts, and this really isn't too bad when I'm logging in, I have my password manager that inputs my username and password. Then it asks for my YubiKey. I plug in my key, and then it asks, hey, what's your code for that key, your PIN code? I type in my code, I press enter, and then I'm in. And usually I'll stay logged into, on like this computer, but anytime, it sees something suspicious, a lot of times I'll be required to put in my key. So YubiKey 5 off on allthingssecure.com. Hopefully you can grab that there. Thank you again to Yubico for sponsoring this live stream. And I hope that you guys appreciate just the opportunity to be able to do these live streams. I think this has been a lot of fun for me. All right, let us move in. Oh, yeah, here we go. Let us move into my email alias strategy. I'm going to do my best to try to visualize this for you here. And then again, if you're just joining us, I want you to know what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you my strategy, which isn't foolproof and will probably be improved over this coming year as well. But this is what I do. And then at the end, I'm going to invite you, or as we're talking, invite you to share how you do things differently. And then maybe we can crowdsource a little bit of educational learning here, because I'm not the only one who has, knowledge and expertise. And so I'd love to even learn from a lot of you. So my email alias strategy kind of boils down to this, right? I've got my personal email, which is still a Gmail account. I've got my business email account. I've got a secure secret email account, one that I don't share with many people. And then I've talked about this in the past. I don't use this very often anymore. This has kind of become less important to me, but I've used a pseudonym in the past. So this pseudonym is essentially a second Gmail account. Remember that first email alias strategy that I talked about? So, I actually 1, 2, 3, these are all 4 different email inbox accounts that I've created. The business one is based on a custom URL and it is hosted by Google. Personal Gmail, this is just legacy, and I've wanted for a while to kind of migrate that, and I think eventually soon I will be migrating that over to a private service. I have a private email account, but this is one that I've kind of kept secret, and I haven't put a custom URL on it yet because this is the one that I use to talk to my CPA, that I give to my bank. This is the one that nobody, not even my wife, not because I'm hiding it from her, but just she doesn't need to know. Like nobody emails this address except for like 3 or 4 people that specifically need to: my lawyer, my CPA, and my bank, right? So anything outside of that, if I get emails from any of them and in other email accounts, I know that it's not correct. Something's fraudulent, phishing, something's off, okay? So what happens is within my personal address, I have I can create subaddresses. I used to do this a lot more before I started using Alias forwarding services, but this is the subaddressing, if you remember, would be my name plus the service at gmail.com. And it's a great way to do it. We've talked about the pros and cons of doing it that way. My business has multiple addresses. Because it's a custom URL, I can create a ton of different aliases. And Google limits you just because they don't want to have hundreds and hundreds to deal with. But I also have split accounts, which you may or may not know, or if you have a business, then you'll understand why I do this. But most emails for my business don't go to me, or else I would go crazy. I have my assistant who has her own inbox in the United States, and she deals with most of the email that comes into my business and then only forwards what I need to see. And so that split account has saved my mental health. And if you own your own business, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So that's just having multiple users, multiple accounts on a custom URL, and then having one of those only being accessed by an assistant or something like that. Or if you wanted to, if you're just a solo entrepreneur and you just need to have a split in your account so that you've got one that you're working from daily and one that it's like the catch-all that you get all the replies to emails and everything from, that could work as well. For my secure secret, I do have multiple addresses. I don't use subaddressing. I literally add and create new aliases through Proton Mail, and that's worked out really well. But then I use an alias service. I told you I use Simplelogin, and I use those specifically with my personal and business. Right now, I haven't introduced those into my Proton account. I don't want to muddy my secure email with aliases, because usually if I'm using an alias, it's with a service that I don't really care about that much. Does that make sense? It's something that's kind of a throwaway for me. So I actually have my email alias service connected to both of these accounts. And so it defaults to going to my personal account, but I could create an email alias and direct that to my business account. And again, because I'm using a service, an email forwarding service like Simplelogin, in either of those cases, if I reply to that email, they don't get my real business address. They don't get my real personal address, the one that comes to my inbox. These aliases get reconfigured when it goes back out through Simplelogin so that the person receives it from that alias. And then finally, that I set the aliases, and then I told you before I have the on the fly aliases. So I've set aliases for newsletters, for things like streaming services, right? So I've kind of got those set aliases. And then I create on the fly aliases as I'm signing into different accounts. So, things that don't necessarily fit into anything. Like, for example, this is a good one, by the way. Oh my gosh. I told you we're traveling soon. My wife's going to be in a wedding, and she had to buy a dress for that wedding. And she went to this website. Oh my gosh, when it comes to wedding stuff, they have all of these websites that are specifically designed for weddings. So when she went and bought the dress that she had to buy through this particular online retailer, I kid you not, they sent us, thankfully, I created an on-the-fly alias because I had to create an account in order to buy this dress. And so I created an on-the-fly alias. I don't remember the name of but I just put the name of the website and then my custom alias URL. And it automatically got sent and redirected to my personal address. And I wanted to keep that alive long enough for the dress to get delivered. But after that, which, by the way, literally this morning, I got an email that the dress was delivered. So now I'm going to go in and delete that alias URL, that alias email, because they sent me, I kid you not, 20 to 30 emails all about wedding stuff as if I'm getting married. It was crazy. And this is the type of marketing stuff that I'm trying to avoid as much as possible. Something to note here, okay? When it comes to these type of email aliases from an email forwarding service, those email aliases are permanent. And that's really important to know. Okay. Why is that important? Because with the temporary emails that I told you about earlier, if you stop using it, they could be recycled and used later. When you use an email alias through any of the services that I talked about, whether that's Hide My Email, Simplelogin, Cloaked, those emails will not, or maybe I should only speak to Simplelogin because that I know for sure. Those are permanent. So even if you delete that alias, they will, or disable, let's say you disable it, it will always be yours. Even if you delete that alias, it will be disassociated with your account, but that will be permanent and never used again. And that's really important to know so that you don't feel like, oh, this could be used again when you're using these services. And let's say that you use something like Simplelogin. I get this question a lot, and you create 100 email aliases, and then you decide, hey, I don't want to keep paying for this service anymore. Those aliases continue, even if you stop your subscription, those aliases continue to work. You just can't create new ones, or you have a limit on the free tier of how many new aliases you can create. And there are other little limitations, but you don't just lose your aliases. That's one of the things that I think about too when it comes to aliases is, am I stuck in a service, a particular service that I can't get out of? And that's why the custom URL can be so powerful. But for a lot of these aliasing services, as long as they stay in business, and that is, that's a legitimate concern. As long as they stay in business, you can continue to use those email aliases. All right. So the questions that I'm asking myself when I'm creating an email alias is, do I need to respond to this email address? That's really important for me to know? Is privacy incredibly important here? Or is this just me buying my wife a wedding dress and it's not necessarily about privacy? It's just about not wanting to get tons of marketing, right? What if, again, I talked about what if this service goes out of business and I lose access to this email alias? I don't see that as a high risk probability, but you can play the worst case scenario game and kind of see where that leads you. And then, will I want to disable or delete this? There's a difference between blocking an email and disabling or deleting an email so that nothing can be sent to it ever again. And I prefer to have the control to be able to disable or delete it. Okay, so this is my email strategy. I hope that my email aliasing strategy, I hope that makes sense to you. It's nothing mind-blowing. But it is sometimes really good to see it kind of diagrammed out. And so as you look at this and as we, I'm looking at the comments right now, I would love for you to kind of put in what are maybe some of the services that I haven't talked about that you think are important in this whole process that you've used, as well as what are maybe some of the differences in your strategy that you saw different from what I just shared here that maybe we could learn from, because I'd love to hear from you and get kind of some feedback because this is live. This is really live. I am here in my studio in Thailand and talking to you hopefully around the world. And I think this is, to me, live streams are a lot of fun in part because of this interaction. All right, so I'm going to show this here. It says Josh, wrong one. Josh, who's just been a fantastic, very engaged member of this community, says, I wouldn't put too much trust in the aliasing service if you're exposing it to 2 accounts and be against compartment. Wouldn't that put too much? Okay. So one of the things to note here is that with the aliasing service, I am not giving them access to my accounts. I am only allowing them to forward to those accounts. So they can't see anything in my accounts. Simplelogin doesn't get access to my Gmail, doesn't get access to any of these. And so because they're just forwarding and because I'm not doing super sensitive, I'm not using these aliases for super sensitive info, I don't feel that bad about it, but you make a great point when it comes to compartmentalizing. And that's where maybe one of the questions you can add to my list of questions is, do I need to compartmentalize this in any way so that if, that you're not having to trust any particular service, with this email alias. So if that's a key concern for you, then that's going to dictate how you set up your email aliases. So great kind of input there, Josh. Thanks for sharing. Sorry, you said you should make a video about living 100% on cryptocurrency and how to do so privately. You want to know the crazy thing? I actually have exited as of this last month most of my crypto positions just because I've been I've been burned on a few things. I'll just say that much. I'm not saying that crypto is bad, and I will probably get back into it, but I've had to make some purchases recently that require me to get some capital out. Okay, so why not a 10-minute email if something for just a test or not to care, Marcin? This is a great point. And this is why I said those temporary emails are a legitimate way to do email aliasing. If you just need something for 5 or 10 minutes, as long as you understand the drawbacks to doing that is you won't be able to reply to that email. And also, let's say, like I said, I needed to, create an alias for my wife to buy this dress, and I want to maintain that alias until that dress gets delivered. Well, that's going to extend beyond that 10-minute mark that you're talking about. And so there are differences. And honestly, also, I like being able to create email aliases on the fly, just like, boom, put it in, know exactly. With the temporary email addresses, having to go into that service or using even an extension on my browser, sometimes that's a friction that's too high for me to care about. I don't want to have to do that. So great point. I do think that temporary email addresses can still be a part of your strategy. I just haven't done it as much now that I have the on the fly aliases. All right, we've got Marcus saying that he pays for and uses Mozilla Relay or Firefox Relay. I've seen that. They got Simplelogin for free with my paid Proton. Exactly. So if you have a Proton account, you have Simplelogin for free, and it's actually part of your Proton Pass plan, which is their password manager. And one of the cool things about Simplelogin that I didn't even mention before is that it is open source. So again, talking about that trust factor, when you're thinking about these things, you can, if I remember right, and again, I could be slightly off on this, I'm pretty sure that open source would allow you to even host your own version of Simplelogin. It just would take a lot of setup on your end. So it is open source, which makes it a little more secure here. I have heard of Firefox Relay. I haven't used it myself, but I think that's another opportunity similar to like Hide My Email from Apple, where they can help you create these email aliases. All right, we have, do you use Lavabit or dark internet mail environment for your private email like Edward Snowden? No, I don't. Edward Snowden has a threat model that is significantly higher than mine. Sometimes I'll access Proton Mail through Tor, the Tor browser, which would be, kind of add an additional layer of privacy there. But I haven't felt the need to go that deep down the rabbit hole. And so, no, I'll answer that there. Okay. Oh yeah. Ken says StartMail from the makers of StartPage, which I've used that before. StartMail is great. It's bare bones, but they have a great aliasing where you can give them a time limit and easy burner email creation. Yeah. If I remember right, StartMail was one of the few services that I tested for secure email that had unlimited aliasing. A lot of the services, even Proton, well, now that they've got Simplelogin, it's a little bit different, but a lot of these services give you a limit on how many aliases you can create using their URL. But StartMail, I think, was one of the few that was unlimited. So yeah, thank you. All right, let me see. All right, this is a great question. Services like Delete Me and Incogni, these are like data removal services. Use a single email address as part of your data when asking data brokers to remove you. By using aliases, do you make it harder for you to get your data deleted? Yes and no. First of all, there are some services, I think Incogni is one of these, where you are limited to only one email address, whereas Delete Me, I can actually input multiple addresses or multiple email addresses, and it will try to find. So I could do my personal and my work address, and it could try to find both of those and remove that information. The thing about using aliases is it kind of removes the need to have that stuff removed. So I still want to have my primary and my work address, my work information removed off the internet, which is why I still use Delete Me. I actually have an Incogni account just to test that, continually test it. But when you're using, I don't care if someone gets an alias of mine, because it's going to be unique and it's not going to be anywhere else. So I'm not expecting Delete Me and Incogni to find these aliases and delete them for me, because they're really not that important. Josh says, Josh is, man, just firing off the questions. Is it safe to use several custom domains in one Proton Mail account, even for separate aliases or pseudonyms? I would have to check. I am not even sure that you can use multiple URLs. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. I think you can only, well, I might be wrong on that. You should probably be able to do multiple URLs in an account. Safe is I have a hard time answering those type of questions, just because I think it's relative to what your level of safety would be. I think it's fine to use several custom domains in one Proton account and then separate those into different folders if you wanted to. But if for some reason you felt like having, separate inboxes would be more valuable, then you could set up different accounts for each of those URLs. Okay, let's see here. Todd brings up a great point. Proton Unlimited, not Proton Mail Plus. Let me see. Proton.me. I'm not sure. I think that, oh goodness, sometimes it's hard to find the pricing page. Yeah, if we go to allthingssecured.com, nope, proton.me/allthingssecured. That's what I'm looking for. The Proton Unlimited, Proton Mail Plus has 10 hide my email aliases. So you're correct. I'm glad you kind of brought that up, Todd. So there are different tiers for Proton, and when you just have the plus mail or the mail plus, it comes with basically what would amount to the free simple login plan, whereas the unlimited or the visionary or duo even comes with unlimited hide my email addresses, which is basically just simple login pro account. So great point. I'm glad you brought that up. Let's see here. Ryan, yeah, you have hit the nail on the head. Any particular reason you continue to actively use Gmail while also using Proton? I have essentially relegated my Gmails to BigNet. I don't even know. Maybe that's being used simply to access certain Google services. Yes. So the Gmail account is legacy for me, and it just hasn't, like I'm just slow, honestly, to migrate everything over to something else. And I've used that email for so many years. We're talking decades now at this point, that I would find it like I'd still have to keep that active, which I'm sure you do as well. Migrating over to something else, wouldn't be too difficult. I think Proton has an easy switch service that helps do that, but there are things that, like I'm okay using that Gmail account for the services that I use it for, just because I'm of my own threat model here. And then I've migrated the things that are more sensitive over to the other accounts. But that's a great point. You can like that. Maybe that is one of those things that I'm going to prioritize coming into either the end of this year or next year, is kind of making that switch. But as with all things privacy and security, and hopefully this is something that I'm able to convey well over my videos, is that, man, it is a journey. It is something that takes time. It's not like okay, this weekend, I'm just going to swap everything over and I'm going to become private and secure. No, like there are steps to it. And I'm on step 15 out of 100, still making my way through. And so you've pointed out one of my weak areas, and I won't deny it. So yeah, let's see. Do I use an alias for Apple ID? That's an interesting question. I don't, mainly because I set up my Apple ID before I even thought about that. There are a couple things, like even me right now talking to you on this YouTube channel, my name is actually Josh, and it didn't dawn on me until years into doing this that I should have done like an alias, or like done some kind of pseudonym for a channel about privacy and security. But there are times in which we just aren't as smart as we think we are. So yeah, sometimes we have to make up for past errors, and some of those errors are hard to make up for, and it would be very difficult, I think, to change that. How many email addresses do you have? I probably have over 100, but I couldn't even list out what those are, because a lot of those are just random aliases that I created that I don't use frequently, by the way. And then a lot of things, especially with business, there's a lot of email addresses that get attached to a lot of different URLs, because I host a lot of different websites. So, all right, let's see here. These are all great questions. So somebody comes in, just says, I forwarded everything to my Proton mail. That's something you could easily do. Like I said, they have an easy switch where you could just switch everything over, and you can do that. I can't unring the bell. You can't. I like that. Todd says you can't unring the bell. Very true. Once you have rung that bell, sometimes it's very hard to unring it. And that's true with privacy and mostly with privacy as well. There's a lot of things that you can change with security, go back and fix. But with privacy, once your data's out there, or once you make that error, that a lot of times it's really just monitoring is what you can do. That's, people ask me, how do I fix, the fact that my social security number is out there on the dark web? Well, You can't, unfortunately. What you can do is now be vigilant and monitor your credit, monitor your bank account. I just had, goodness, last week I had to cancel my credit card because of another fraudulent charge. And the only reason I found that is because I am constantly reconciling my bank account, and because I love budgeting. And so I found it within 24 hours, canceled the card, and now I'm having to get a new one. And it's annoying, but that's just part of having to monitor your stuff because a lot of your data is already out there.